The energy of negativity and appreciation are like the tidal waters of the earth. When we live in the state of negativity, it permeates everyone around us into being moored and listed on the side. But when we live in appreciation, that what is happening in our lives is for us and take a stance, as we'll see, as our worldview, oh my gosh, we lift everyone around us. Love lifted me. That's right, baby. That's what we're talking about. We may be saying a rising of tides, but what are we talking about, right? Love lifted me. Thank you, Celebration, and the band. You sound amazing. Amazing. So what are we going to do for the next 4 weeks? We are going to talk about appreciation and devotion. We're going to look at how those emotions can kickstart your transformation. Today's talk, we're going to center on some simple techniques such as shifting our focus, changing our focus from what's wrong with the world to what's wondrous in the world. And with that small change, it's a shift in consciousness, my friends. That's what we're talking about. Now, when we do this spiritual work and we're starting to feel a little like, ooh, I'm love. I'm supposed to be love in the world. And then life happens. Ooh, am I supposed to still be love in the world? It's hard sometimes to get that balance. So we're going to talk about how do you be an awakened consciousness while living on planet Earth. It's doable, my friends. It's doable. So let's talk a little bit about history. In the ancient teachings, right, in the ancient teachings of religion, we learned that to get enlightenment, what we needed to do was separate ourselves from the world. Where would we go? We'd go to a monastery. We'd go to a convent. But to separate out from the world, to become devout people of God, right? We were there to do God's work. There was some rigidity in our prayers and how early we got up in the morning and how hard we worked, the sacrifices that we made, the songs of praise, and the denial of everything that's wondrous about our humanity, right? And why were we doing all of this? For God! That's why we were doing it. Then there was another evolution of consciousness. And during this time, people wanted to be out in the world. They wanted to get the word of God out to others and help those less fortunate. But guess what? That's not the end. What happens? Our spirituality keeps growing, right? We keep evolving. And then we found deeper ways to be with Spirit. And another shift happened, and people actually challenged the dogma of religion. There were questions regarding the role of the church. Was it necessary to have some spiritual leader as an interceding? What is that? Thank you, that word. Who would intercede on our behalf? Or could we go directly to Spirit? And then what is our relationship with the divine, right? And as we delved into our spiritual awakening, we experienced that going within means that we were going within to the kingdom of heaven and realizing that divinity was in each of us. And we discovered that we are here to be the frequency of love in the world. We are the expression of divinity in all of its wisdom, in all of its creation, in all of its light. Yet many of us still grappled with the external evidence that supported our erroneous understanding of what the world is and how the world works. From our humanity, if we see something that we don't like, that we think is bad or evil, what do? We condemn it, right? We do a separation, condemnation. And here we are, the saintly ones, right? And even, I would say, as late as probably 2010, when we first joined Unity or other New Thought organizations, we were often told, don't watch the news. Don't listen to that, right? Don't concern ourselves with the negative things of this world, and to focus on the positives, and to focus on our spiritual connection to the divine. And I believe that was necessary. I believe that was a necessary part of our awakening. To finally realize that we are God in skin requires us to do that deep spiritual work and healing. We had to come to the awareness that we are co-creators of our lives, that there is only oneness, and we are here to transform the world. Yet before we have the capacity to save the world, we have to save ourselves. Now here we are, again, on another evolution of consciousness. We are being asked to live in a world as a beacon of light. What does that mean? It means we cannot bury our heads in the sand and pretend that what's happening to others doesn't impact and affect us. Amen? We are being asked to see and know God in all forms. All forms. We are being asked to release the labeling of what has been and to embrace all that we have experienced before in deep appreciation. Why? Because it brought us here. It brought us here to this moment. And what's so special about this moment? We're in a magnificent shift of consciousness. Do you hear that? A magnificent shift of consciousness. So whatever happened before brought us here, brought me here to be with you, brought you here to be with me. That's a celebration, my friends. And as we are in the process of calling into form a new way of being the light in the world, we're saying that our souls have to recognize beyond this realm. Let's talk about what the teachers share with us. This is from Paul Selig's book, The Kingdom. And he talks about our ego's understanding of the world. The small self will seek to witness the evidence it has accrued for what a life should be, a world should look like, people should act or behave. How many times have you said, what, are you raised by wolves? I know I've gone there. Okay. Your agreement in the higher way is to transcend the old, not to ignore it, not to paint it a pretty color, but to witness it from the higher and escalate it through your own expression. What are we talking about? We're saying that often we fear change. And this community is no exception, but change is necessary to bring the old ideas created in fear into a higher expression. Do you hear me? Moving it into a higher expression. The commandment is for us to transcend the old. And in our spiritual awakening, we are operating as divinity with a new mandate. To create anew. To create anew. And create anew doesn't mean destroy the old. Because I know that's what you hear when I'm like, we're creating anew. She's saying destroy the world. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it may mean a deconstruction. A deconstruction of seeing all the elements that we created in fear and re-knowing it. Right? We're re-knowing it from our divinity. So what does this mean? Because you know when I talk, you're like, what? What is she talking about? Okay, let's take a real life example, our bodies. We've been conditioned to believe that our bodies must be in perfect working condition, right? perfect working condition, no blemishes, nothing wrong with it, for it to be of God. And when our bodies don't work the way we think or desire them to, we go into the separation thing. We immediately say our body isn't whole, and it isn't holy. But we have the mistaken understanding that for something to be of God means it must be perfect. No, my friends. We think it must not have any blemishes or problems. No, my friends, that's not true. The perfection of God is in all things. The perfection of God is in all things. Whether we deem it broken or beautiful, God is there. And what this next level of evolution is asking us to do is to see our perfections and our imperfections beyond how it presents itself in this realm. So this reminds me of an ancient story I'm going to share with you, and it's called We'll See, and I'm sure a lot of you know this parable. Once upon a time, on a fine fall morning, an old farmer went out to tend his animals and crops. At first light, the farmer was dismayed to see his fence had been crushed by a falling tree during the night. All 3 of the farmer's prized horses had disappeared. The other villagers moaned in sympathy. "Whatever will you do?" they asked the farmer. "This is terrible," they all cried, shaking their heads sadly. "And right before harvest time, too. Your harvest will rot in the field. What will your family eat this winter? How will you get your crops in without your horses?" one of the villagers asked the old farmer. "We'll see," was the farmer's only reply as he returned to his chores. Later on that morning, the farmer heard the sound of hoofs, and looking up saw his 3 horses had returned, but what else? They brought 2 wild horses back with them. Soon the villagers were heard to express their delight at the farmer's good fortune. "What a wonderful thing to have happened," the other villagers cried. "What a wealthy man you will be with this new stock of animals." "We'll see," was the old farmer's reply. After lunch that day, the farmer's son was trying to break one of the wild horses to the saddle. Suddenly, the horse threw the son to the ground. Running to his injured son, the farmer found his son's leg badly broken. The neighbors were soon around to give their opinions. "What a terrible calamity," the villagers said. "What a disaster. Now you really won't be able to get your crop in without a strong son to help you. He will take months to heal. Whatever will you do now?" the other villagers asked the farmer in despair. The farmer would only shrug and say, "We'll see." Later that afternoon, military officials rode into the tiny village with a great clattering of weapons and jostling of horses. Looking grim and serious, the soldiers announced an official conscription. Every young and able man was to be drafted into service that day. The farmer's son, having just been injured, was left behind, even as other sons and husbands were taken. No one in the village could believe the old farmer's good fortune, and not everyone was happy about it. "Surely the most tremendous good fortune has smiled upon you today," the villagers grumbled. "How can anyone be so lucky?" But the old farmer would only reply, "We'll see." So that's an old Zen story. And like the farmer, we are being called to look beyond how things appear to be to how they really are from the lens of our divinity. In this story, there's a steadfastness to this farmer. No matter what was going on around him, he was in this state of grace, right? From our own humanity, we have no idea how things are going to turn out, but we get all aflutter. Ooh, what could this be? Oh, my goodness, right? But grace gives us this knowing that regardless of our human ideas, there is something greater than us that is for us. So here's the call, my friends. It's time for us to step up into being that calming, non-anxious presence of divinity. That's what we're being called to do. Once again, from the kingdom. If every lifetime you have known yourself in has colluded to this precious moment of awakening, there is no fear. There is no blame. There is no need to blot out an idea, pretend something didn't happen, or burn someone at the stake for what you would have them have been or done to you. What would your life be like if every time there was a change you said, we'll see? Perhaps you wouldn't be worried that every time a change happened, it meant yours or someone else's survival was at stake. Perhaps you could breathe into the possibility that this change could maybe even be for your highest good. What? What would other people's lives be like if every time there was a change you said, we'll see? Perhaps they would feel safe and at peace around you. Because we know as we shift and we become at peace, what happens to those around us? Right? The same thing happens to them. Now, I chose the title, A Rising Tide Lifts All Boats, to remind us that we are all in this together. So just for a moment, think about boating, whether you're sailing or motorboating or doing the kayak or canoeing, right? It's affected by the tide, yes? So when it's low tide and there isn't enough water to support a boat, every boat is moored. Every boat is moored. It's not like one boat zooming down. Every boat is moored. And sometimes they even lift a little to the side, as in that first picture there, right? But when the tide comes in, we can watch that every vessel is lifted and righted, yes? And it's ready to just scoot on the ocean, the lake, the river. So, my friends, this is how humanity works as well. The energy of negativity and appreciation are like the tidal waters of the earth. When we live in the state of negativity, it permeates everyone around us into being moored and listed on the side. But when we live in appreciation, that what is happening in our lives is for us, and take a stance as we'll see, as our worldview, oh my gosh, we lift everyone around us. You see, we demonstrate the ease of living life on life's wondrous terms. So imagine a world that revolves around appreciation and, we'll see, curiosity. From this lens, if change comes, there's a sense of wonder as opposed to fear, right? A sense of possibility instead of the desire to go back to the good old days. My friends, let me make this clear. The good old days aren't coming back. The good old days are not coming back. They are done. They are gone. The world has moved beyond those times. And even if we try to implement all those things that we thought was so successful 5-10 years ago, they're not going to work. They're not going to work. Right? The paradigm, the way we always did things, is no longer valid. Let's take something simple as the English language. Oh my gosh, that's changed. Ever do a text? If you're trying to write out grammatically correct language on a text, the conversation has moved. You've blown that, right? You better be LOLing and SMHing, right? It's changed. But if we are unable to meet change with appreciation, we will continue to be anxious and stuck. If we have a tantrum and say, I will not be moved. This is how it should be. This is what it should look like. We're going to be left by the wayside, my friends, because changes are happening. It's happening all around us. The world is not waiting for us to be comfortable. The world is not waiting for us to be okay with change. It's simply moving forward. The world has changed significantly. The pandemic has changed us all. Who we were 3 years ago is not who we are today. We can attempt to bring all those people back, all the things that we used to do, how we used to do them. But it's not going to be the same. We have all been altered. By being in appreciation and viewing the details that happen in our lives from the lens of, we'll see. It's a way for us to soothe our anxiety, right? By being in that place of appreciation and curiosity. I don't know about you, but I'm ready. I am ready for us to take that challenge and lift all the boats.
Give to your heart and give from what is love, so that this love boat can sail on. And let us go together and say our affirmation: divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.